Hello and welcome to the Larger Than Necessary First Player Token podcast. This is episode 96. My name is Chris.
I'm Euan Truffle.
Carry on, Dave.
I'm David.
I completely forgot we called you Euan Truffle.
Has to stick. I've already had one listener bring it up to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I mean, it's official now.
What were they saying?
Just address me as Euan Truffle. I wasn't offended. I was like, yes.
That's pretty good.
You said my name.
That's good recognition.
Yeah. As I knew exactly what was going on.
I also enjoyed your cameo appearance in the last episode.
Oh, yeah.
When you somehow managed to time it perfectly to come bursting through the door at the end. That was good.
I almost didn't do it. I was like, oh. Might as well. While I'm here, say hello.
You're sounding a bit rough, Euan. What's happened?
That's
What have you been doing?
It was my brother's stag do at the weekend, so I'm
disgusting.
I'm a bit buckled, really.
This is why Pawel isn't here today. He's disgusted by your behaviour.
I know. I was genuinely told off by a Muslim on Friday for even going on a stag do.
Is this true?
Yeah.
Did they not approve of your drinking?
It was like I was going to give you like a free energy bar thing that I have, but I'm not going to give you it anymore because it's a waste of time.
He was probably right.
Yeah, this isn't going to do me any good. I'm going to drink myself into oblivion.
So you're beyond energy bars at this point. Well, that's a story to tell the grandkids, Euan.
Yes. Well, one my brother can tell.
His grandkids.
Yeah.
Excellent.
The bag of spew that he left at Dobby's garden centre.
Okay, so
let's
move on. I wasn't wanting that many details, but we're not here to talk about stag do's. We're here to talk about board games this week. And we have got it's a mixed bag, but we've got a couple of delicious new ones.
Yep.
And first up, we're going to talk about Detective.
Woo-hoo.
Which is Ignacy Trzewiczek's sort of latest release. I believe it's his latest one, but I don't know because the man's a machine. He's constantly working on stuff.
This must have taken a lot of work.
I think so. So Detective is exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of strange in that it's a board game that's got a modern setting. Like, how often do you play that? And you're playing as a different sort of investigators from some straight. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's supposed to be like the FBI style thing. But you know, one of the people you can play as is an ex-FBI guy. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. Who gave these people authority is what I want to know.
I think it's very much a kind of like American crime show invention. Like this crack unit of people who are former somethings. All coming together to solve international crimes.
And it's international crimes.
Yeah.
And I had a very surprising story, actually. I mean, the game's split into 5 cases.
Yeah.
But the cases are all kind of linked together. And you have to kind of play them in order, and some things that you do in some cases might affect the other cases. And I was thinking it was going to be some pretty bog standard American style, story, and it wasn't that.
Yeah, it was not what I was expecting at all.
It went back to World War II era stuff that you were looking into, and it was quite interesting actually.
Because
it did surprise me.
A lot of it's based on real things you'll look up online.
Yeah.
Is the designer Polish in this game? It's just interesting because there was a little bit of a Polish theme in or well, not theme, but elements in the first case.
Well, yeah,
that we did together.
I mean, the whole rumpus kind of revolves around a Polish object.
Yes,
So
the subject which we're just going to refer to
It's just
obliquely.
The Polish object.
The Polish object.
Yeah, sorry, Ignacy Trzewiczek is Polish. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I did wonder, just because there was some particular detail in this game, particularly when we were looking up stuff online, because that's one of the things you do in this game. It's app-driven, partly.
Yeah, there's a website.
Yeah, well, I say app. It's not really an app, is it? You actually connect to a website. It could be an app. I'm not sure why it isn't, but maybe they've decided that, well, for some reason, they've decided to go for having an actual website that you have to connect to, which did cause a few issues.
Well, it did, yeah.
And obviously, if you don't have an internet connection, you're somewhat stymied, I think. But anyway, it's very similar to having an app in that there's a specific website that you can connect to as part of performing the investigations in this game.
Yeah, and you will actually interact with it. You sort of input information that you've gleaned, and you can put in codes to sort of get more information about things that you're sort of investigating, and it'll give you sort of,
because it ties in with the other components of the game, which are cards.
Yeah,
and those are the sort of three. Oh well, and I suppose you've got your board, which doesn't actually come with the game, but I think you're kind of encouraged to. Euan's looking at me puzzledly.
The board, because
it doesn't come with a board. The board that we didn't make, but the board that, if you ever see like a detective show, the board that they have on the back wall that has pictures of people and places and post-it notes, and then little bits of string or like lines drawn connecting them together. You're kind of encouraged to construct something like that along the way.
Making notes is definitely vital, but they kind of they're encouraging you to kind of do it in that particular style, mind maps and things.
And in addition to this, you just look up stuff just on the general internet as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, when the game starts out, you do take characters, don't you, in this game?
You do pick characters, yes.
Yeah.
And they have abilities, which we didn't really use. And that might be the reason for the outcome we got.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. But they do have different abilities that tie into the kind of mechanics of the game based around the cards. But they're not roles per se.
No, they are. I mean, apart from the sort of their abilities, which I mean don't come in all that often. There's like really specific things that they seem to let you do. And they are just like character avatars.
Yeah. Didn't really give you much of an identity. I didn't.
Well,
they're
they're former FBI or various agency people.
I didn't really feel I was role playing my particular character. I don't even remember who she was now.
The thing I noticed about the pictures on all of them, because we were discussing whether or not any like images were, and this is our of course pet peeve here on this podcast, is the Kickstarter backers. Images being used, but because there was only a sort of limited number of characters, they didn't seem to be taken. But the thing I noticed about them, they all looked just uncannily a little bit like certain like actors and things like that, but not exactly like them, but just like a little bit. Like I took like there was a character and she looked really like what's her name? See, Michelle Rodriguez, this like Hispanic actress, like looked a little bit like her, but obviously not her. But like, kind of that she meant to be.
I'm wondering where they got these images from, because they definitely look like stock images of some sort, but also not. It's kind of strange.
They look like they've maybe been altered very slightly.
Yeah,
like my character was wearing like glasses, and I kept looking. It's like they almost look like they've been added on top of her, and I kept wondering what her eyes looked like.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really pay a great deal of attention to mine, but the manual of the game does encourage you to take on roles, though, not related to the little character cards that you have, but roles within the team in this cooperative game. So it encourages you to have one person who's the computer operator, I guess.
Yeah.
One person's supposed to be taking sort of detailed notes. Is that right? I can't remember the exact things. I know they want one person to make the mind map.
Yeah.
That was one of them.
then there's somebody that should be like the details person,
Yes.
somebody that's kind of poring over all the little things that you've found and, trying to just basically deconstruct things a bit more.
Yeah.
They also sort of encourage that there's one person who is the narrator. And just to try and tell a colourful story, I suppose, would be the the thing for them. So they're probably just reading the cards and stuff. But yeah, it encourages you to do that. But you can do it any way you want, any way you see fit.
Yeah, I think people in different groups of people will play it in different ways, and I think you tend to find your own role in this game as it goes on.
Like initially, I was finding myself writing down a lot of stuff, and then it didn't really correlate, and I was like learned as it went on to kind of okay, this is maybe the information that I want to keep a hold of as we go on, and sort of we can refer back to. There was even I made a few notes about things that sort of came up. I was like, and because I saw stuff to do with characters that we dealt with going into the later cases, I'm like, I started making notes on certain things about them. I'm like, if they're significant to this case, or they might be tangentially significant to another case, there might be certain things. There's the military sort of connection, things like that. With probably getting a little bit into spoilers here, but there's certainly there's stuff to do with World War II and various operations in different places. And I started thinking, I wonder if this could tie in with heroin smuggling and stuff like that. There was a weird East Asian connection and little things like that. And it's
I don't remember this East Asian connection.
I can't remember. There was one really specific thing that came out. I was like, no, I'm going to make a note of this just in case it rears its head.
Which role would this be then?
I don't know.
Just in the detective
conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. You were saying about the strings.
What have you got for me, McGonagall? Well, boss, it's a long shot.
We all kept getting kicked off the case.
You have your case, Chief.
But I mean, it definitely helps to be methodical and make notes in this game because there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, you just start with this deck of cards. You kind of start. It's one of these games where the instructions for the game are quite simple, and they try not to give too much away. Seventh Continent is like this as well, and they just give you a start card and say, take it from here, and this card is going to tell you everything you need to do. Yeah. And that's part of the fun of the game, is just discovering the way that it works and the way that it operates. And so that's, that beginning card gives you some introduction stuff for the text, for the case, and then various leads that you can follow up. And that's the kind of main mechanic of the game, is following leads.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a board with locations on it, because in certain leads you have to be in the right location in order to follow them up. Like if you want to investigate, if you want to look into previous cases, you have to be at the police department, I think it is, to go through their case files. What other...
There's things like field work and stuff, which if you're out in there's out in the city, not a specific location.
There's a generic catch-all location.
Yeah.
The field for everything else that doesn't take place at the whatever it was.
The lab in the courthouse, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good simulation of a FBI agent's life.
Yeah.
There's either the field or there's work.
This ties into the time mechanic, because every time you change location, it takes up an hour in your day, because your day starts at 8 o'clock, let's say. Everyone turns up for work. Everything that you do can potentially take time. And so you move the little counter on the time track. And we tend to knock off at, 5?
Yeah, I think 5 was the finishing day. But you can work overtime. But every hour you work overtime, you get a stress marker. And if you exceed the number of stress markers, the case ends, and you have to then just go to the end of the case thing, which we'll probably get to in a minute.
Yeah, because normally you have a number of days. It's not just one day in order to do the case. You have a set number of days in which to complete it.
Have we described what the actual deck for each case is? Because each case is just a deck of cards. Mm. And they're numbered, and it does tell you in the rulebook that in each case you're not going to see all the cards. Okay, so don't even try to. And every time you go somewhere and follow up a lead, you take the numbered card, but you don't get to look at the card at all before you do so. And this is where we had a bit of a what we think might have been a critical failure because you're not allowed to look at the cards. We ended up going and doing stuff that ate up so many hours of our day because each card has an hour thing listed on it, or well, not all of them, but most of them do. And a lot of the cards that we were going and looking at were just like, this takes 3 or 4 hours to do this thing, and you were just like, well, once you've picked up the card, that's it. You have to spend those hours. And I think we had like one day during that case where we basically just did like 2 or 3 things, and that was it. We ran out of time and we couldn't take any more stress on. So, but it's
the fact that you don't see all the cards, it's not possible to see every card that's available in the deck that has all the various leads that you can follow, and you can follow up leads as well. So you can basically, for each card that represents a lead, it can quite often be followed up, which means you flip it over.
Oh, it's called digging deeper. And it generally uses up your skill tokens, which you have a limited amount of. So you have to really be careful about which card you dig deeper on.
Right. So again, that's there's the time and the skill tokens mean that it's just not possible to see everything, and that I guess is the game part of the game, in that you're supposed to use your investigative skills to choose wisely. I mean, there's a little bit of time management in terms of like, what is all the stuff we can do while we're at this location.
Yeah.
So there's that, and that's easy. But other than that, you're meant to like look at what you know at any given time and say, which of these things should we do next? Which of these things is worth doing, and which of these things is probably not. Mm-hmm. Which we find quite difficult, I think.
Well, we're rookie agents.
Yeah.
Or we're rookies when it comes to no longer being former agents.
Yeah, because I mean, that's it. I mean, I think we've pretty much covered how it works. You go through, you get to the end of the allotted number of days. You find out as much as you can in that time, and then you go to the app or the website.
The Antares database is what it's called.
It's the Antares database. That's what you're using.
Yeah. And it's actually a pretty cool sort of little thing, the Antares database. You use it a lot.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk enough about that.
Because a lot of the cards, and a lot of this is, some of it is just the case of you can't fit all the text on these cards, so they've just put a load of the text on the website. And something like, so like if you go and question somebody, for example, you go and question a suspect, it might say to you, go to questioning 104, and that means you have to go into the Antares database, go to the questioning section, type in number 104 or whatever, and then it'll take you to that interrogation, and it'll tell you everything that person is saying. But there's other things, there's files on there, there's there's personnel files, so you might be able to, or their criminal records or whatever, you can pull up people's criminal records and look at them and see like where they were at certain, like if they'd committed a crime in certain days and stuff like that. You get their blood type, all these things that you might use as a TV detective. But yeah, when you get to the end of the game, as Dave was saying, you have to go onto the Antares database and just basically try and solve the case at that point. And you're hit with a bunch of questions, and they're multiple choice, which is probably the only way they could have done it, but it does kind of give you, if you didn't know the answer to some of these questions, it does kind of give you a rough idea of what might be. If you had a rough idea already, then you could do. But it asks you a bunch of questions, and it's interesting because you get scored in points, but you lose points if you picked an answer and got it wrong. If you just said you don't know, you lose nothing. So it was kind of interesting that way, because when we did this thing, I don't know if you remember, Euan, but Ian, the guy we were playing with, kept on saying, just choose that. That's probably the right answer. And I was like, no, Ian, if you get that wrong, we lose points.
Yeah.
So you can't just guess. You can't just guess what the answer to this question is. And obviously, they're all questions related to that case that you've just done. And it might just be, they're pretty specific, I would say. They are just what exactly happened in this room on this day or something like that, and you have to get it exactly right to get the points for it. But it also takes stuff into consideration, like it asks you how much stress tokens you've got, and those get subtracted from your score. And we had a lot.
Yeah,
I think we were pretty much at the limit.
Yeah.
There's another thing as well, though, isn't there? There's the matching evidence.
Yes, matching evidence.
This is one of the cool things that the
Antares database.
The database does that would be more difficult to replicate with cards and so on. You could do it, but it would need lots of weird symbols and things. the matching evidence, it's slightly tricky to explain, but it's proving things in a sense, because you can kind of figure stuff out in this game, and you can have a hypothesis, but you need the evidence to prove the hypothesis, or at least some of it.
Yeah.
And that's what they try to do. So an example would be fingerprints, because that's what we came up against quite a lot. So if you get someone's fingerprints from the police files, that's like half of a match. And that goes that goes into like the database registers that you now have that information. So if at a later point in an investigation you find a piece of evidence that has those matching those fingerprints on it, it comes up as a match in the database, and so you've then conclusively linked that person with the fingerprints to that object. Whereas otherwise, otherwise it might just be conjecture. So it's slightly tricky to explain, but it's quite clever. I like that side of it, because quite often these games, it's like Chris was saying, you could just guess, and there are other detective games where, like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective is quite well known, and you can just often just kind of guess at the end, and if you get it right, you're like, oh well, we got it right, but it's like, well, did we really know? So they've got a little bit. I mean, there's a little bit of that in there with the matching evidence thing as well. So I quite like that.
That is pretty good, actually, and that's going to be the big problem, because we failed quite badly, and I think a lot of it was down to the stress tokens. Now, they do say in this game that getting a full score is pretty much impossible on any case, because you're not going to see all the cards, you're not going to get all the information. If you've managed to get a full score, you've probably cheated.
You've looked at all the cards.
Yeah,
so they tell you you're not going to do.
No, it was the first case was scored out of 40 points. We scored 12, and I think we lost 6 because of the stress tokens that we had. So we got nearly halfway, if you don't count the stress tokens, in terms of how much of the case we managed to piece together. Now, you can just continue on to the next case, and some of the things that you get in the first case might get put into the other cases. Some of the cards get put into the other cases that you haven't, and you don't get to look at them. It just tells you to put these cards into the other cases to say that you have found this information out and it's relevant to another case that you're about to do. So you can continue on to the next case if you like at that point, even if you failed the case, which we did. Or you can reset. And I pressed the reset button thinking, we'll just do this again. I never really thought that through. I don't think we should have done that. I don't think I should have done that. I think that was a mistake, because I think now we're going to have to go back and play through that whole thing again, because the Antares database thing won't let us go on to the next case until we say that we're going to proceed.
Right.
So now we have to go back and do that first case again. We're going to learn a whole load of stuff that we didn't know, because we're going to go and do different things now.
Yeah.
I think, it's probably not as major a thing as I'm making it out.
I think it'll be okay for the.
I think it'll be
case.
fine.
And we'll just not do it for.
The thing was, we didn't do great.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah,
I think we were trying like way too hard. There was like so much like meta type gaming going on.
Yeah,
like guessing like, I bet it'll be like this. This is what's going to happen. It's like, that's not how detectives work. They don't just go, oh yeah, I've seen this before. I'm telling you now, lads.
Well, they're really great detectives too. I've seen it all.
And like there was stuff at the beginning. It's the first case. It's not meant to be like ridiculously obscure and abstract. There was some really, really obvious stuff at the beginning that we didn't do until the last day.
Yeah.
And then when we did it, we were like, yeah,
we should have done this on day one.
This was right at the beginning. We were clearly meant to do this right at the start. And we'd used all our like tokens for investigating things, and so we just like.
Instead, we're coming up with ridiculous theories about the chief of police and.
Well, that was the mayor.
Or the mayor that Euan made up.
Well, the mayor was on the mind map, so.
That's because you wrote it down.
I put a question mark after it, something close.
Don't play this game with us. we inserted people into the game.
We'll get you kicked off the force.
But yes, it was an interesting experience. Like,
it's fun, and I mean, it's going to. Different groups will get different things out of it.
Yeah.
I can see people getting really, really into this. I think you need to give yourself a bit of time when you're playing it, not just because I had to rush off. I think it does help. Like, there's no point in rushing through this.
No. Yeah. In fact, the game even tells you don't rush through it.
Yeah, you'll gain
think
nothing
through your decisions.
Like, I mean, yeah, okay, maybe some people might get a little bit bored or something, but there's a lot of stuff. There's loads of stuff to sit and look at and read, and
you should be like reading all the case files and actually discussing what's going on. It takes a bit of time to do.
It's quite interesting as well.
Yeah, because that was the best thing about it. It was just that there was this depth to the story and the information that was kind of presented to you that I've just never really seen in these kind of games where they've tried to do that sort of thing before. This felt massive in terms of like what you could kind of
because there's all these characters and there's stuff you can learn about them, and most of it won't necessarily be relevant to the case that you're doing, but it's still quite interesting. And then you've got the historical context that they put in it as well, so you can just sit and like read about like the various historical things that are in it too. There's little, like, I was googling like just little things here and there that came up which aren't really anything to do with the case, but I'd like looked them up and I was like, oh yeah, that's what that is. That's quite interesting.
What was the one that's sort of quite early on we like checked like the red, it was like, oh, this gun's a Luger, so this guy must be a Nazi. Or he must have met a Nazi at the very least.
Yeah, it's a good game. They don't make many of these. I think they're difficult to make. Like, it's the same in computer games as well. Making any sort of detective, investigative type experience is extremely challenging.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that they're, like, once you play it, they're once and then you're finished. So once you've played it, you've kind of finished with it as well.
Yeah.
And you just got to pass it on to someone else, I guess, a different group of people. So I think that possibly puts publishers off a little bit. But I think, I mean, I don't have a huge experience with these, but I think, I've played one other and it's a million times better than the one I played. I can't remember what it was called. We sat around for like a couple of hours reading all sorts of stuff and then nobody had any idea what was going on at the end.
Yeah, aye. That rings a bit. Like, I feel like I've done stuff like that myself and just kind of sat there going like, this is either too difficult for me or I'm just not taking this information in. But the way the information is presented to you in this game is it's in sort of short bursts and it gives you things to work with. I never really felt at any point like lost. Like, I didn't know what was going on or had an idea or whatever.
Because usually based on what you'd kind of done previously, there was like certain options that would be fairly obvious. Like, okay, well, these are the things we could follow up on, or we can go and look at this guy.
Just go and look at him.
Let's just have a peer at him.
Yeah, well, it'll be good to see what happens in the next cases.
Yeah.
God help us if they're more difficult than
if we
the
get
first
through
one.
this one. Well, this one's like, I found it was quite a strange little case. It's quite,
It took twists and turns that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to have to go back and replay case 1 just so that we get everything into the Antares database that's relevant, and then onto case 2. But I mean, I think we'll call it a test run. But now we'll go into case 1 knowing some stuff. But I really enjoyed it. It was, I'll be honest, I was quite excited when I first saw it, when I first bought it. And then when it turned up and I kind of started reading through the rulebook, I was like, oh, I don't know if this is what I was expecting. But then once we actually started playing the game, I was like, no, this is actually a really good sort of game or activity thing, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So yes, that is Detective. That is by Portal Games and designed by Ignacy Trzewiczek. Right, moving on. Let's talk about Azul. Okay, Dave, this is your game, so give us the lowdown on Azul.
Azul. It's taken a year to buy this game. It was Azul was one of the darlings of the Christmas rush for 2018.
Oh.
And I assume post-Essen, I believe that's a thing. People got very excited about this abstract strategy game.
Yeah.
Which involves laying little tiles, and they're actual sort of chunky.
They're lovely wee tiles.
Plastic.
Yeah, they're good.
Tiles, but they're nicely made with rounded corners, and they're meant to be azulejos, which are actual mosaic tiles.
Azulejos.
Yeah. From
it's that guy from Azul.
which are Spanish, I think. But people saw this at Essen and just went nuts for it. And so you could not get a copy, and it's taken me until now, basically, because there were a couple of reprints which I managed to miss.
Well, there was definitely, I noticed a few copies knocking about at the
Tabletop Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think there's just been a reprint, so that would have been as a result of that. So, yeah. And, well, was it worth the wait? I don't know.
You're asking, I wasn't waiting for it, but I mean, I enjoyed the game, I'd say that.
Well, I was thinking about picking this game up as well, Dave. It had been sort of sitting in an unopened tab in Firefox for ages, just like, oh yeah, I should really look into buying this game at some point. I have a lot of those. But I was kind of glad when I heard that you'd made an effort to pick this game up, because I really wanted to play it.
Yeah, because this is more the sort of game that I would buy.
Yes, definitely.
Because one of the reasons for that is that people it said it played particularly well with two players. Yeah. So that's the kind of game I tend to buy, abstract two-player strategy games that aren't chess and things like that. So the way Azul works is everyone's got a little board in front of them that represents your wall that you're sort of tiling.
It's strange, nobody actually finishes tiling their wall.
Yeah. There's a bunch of little circles, little cardboard circles that they look cool, that are in the centre of the table, that are known as the factory offer for some reason, and they have the 4 of the little coloured tiles on them. You draw them from a bag which is just full of these tiles. Makes a great noise when you shake it around.
It's really satisfying.
And play just goes round from the first player, and you have to choose a tile from one of the little circles in this that are sitting in between everybody. Sorry, not a tile, you choose a colour. So you take all the tiles of that colour from the little circle. So if it's got 2 reds, a blue and a black on it, you could take the 2 red ones, or you could just take 1 blue one, or you could just take 1 black one. That then goes and gets placed somewhere on your little board in front of you. You have these lines that you can place it on, and there are various restrictions as to where you can place them. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but yeah.
Basically, the player boards have a patterned wall on them, and you're just trying to match up the colours onto that. Now, the lines that you're talking about, that's a bit more confusing to describe, because you have to, basically the lines they're horizontal rows, and you have to place, so on your patterned wall, if you've got, say, a black space empty, you can place a black tile on the horizontal row next to it. But the horizontal rows there's 1 space, then 2 space, then 3 space, then 4 space, and 5 space.
They're like an intermediate stage between drawing and you placing the tile on your wall. And like Chris says, the first one has 1, then the one underneath it has 2 spaces. You have to fill these lines up with tiles of the same colour, and you can only put once you put like a tile of a given colour, like red, you can only then put more red ones into that line. And you have to try and fill that line. So the first one just has 1, so that's easy. You can just put 1 tile in there and it's full. But then the next one you need 2, 3, 4, and then the one at the bottom has 5. But you have to not overfill it. So if you draw, say, 3 red tiles, and the only line you can place them on only has 2 spaces on it, then the surplus one falls on the floor.
I didn't like this idea.
You just drop it, you try and put it on the wall, you're just, it's on the floor, and that's bad, which is negative points in the world of wall tiling, or in the world of Azul.
Someone comes along and says, "This azulejo is on the floor."
Yeah, and you go around, you just go around drawing these tiles, and there's this slightly unusual thing where the tiles that are left over from the circle when you draw tiles, the ones that are left on the circle that are left behind, they don't stay there. They go into the center. So the center starts filling up with lots and lots of tiles. I mean, that's nice. It adds a sort of extra little dimension to it, because part of Azul is drawing what you need, but also trying as best you can to not leave good draws for other players as well. So the whole centre thing kind of plays around that as well a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, because you're like, oh, well, if I take this single red, which would be really good for me, but then it's going to put these extra blue ones in the centre, and now that'll add to the two blue ones that are already there, so someone will be able to take like 4 blues and just fill up a line in one go. But you go around until all the tiles are gone.
Yeah.
From this central area, the factory offer, and then the tiles that are in this intermediate area go onto your wall. Yeah. So any lines that you filled, you take a tile from that row and place it on the appropriate space on the wall.
It's a cheeky wee system. I do quite like it, because all the tiles do have to be picked up. So it's quite likely somebody's going to end up dropping one on the floor. Or possibly needing to anyway.
It didn't happen that much in the game we played, but I can see it happening a lot.
Yeah, we were quite tactical with where we put them.
Yeah, and I mean, you move the tiles across onto your wall. Well, great. What's the point of that? Well, you score points, because that's what this game is about. It's a point scoring game, and it's based on making rows of tiles either horizontally or vertically. Yeah. So each round, once we've got rid of all the tiles in the centre and you're moving them across onto your wall, you look whether it makes any horizontal rows, if it makes any verticals. If it's just a single tile, 1 point. If it's got a little neighbour horizontally, 2 points. If it's got a little neighbour, another tile next to it horizontally, and another tile underneath it vertically, 4 points. Not 3, 4. Yeah.
So you basically can kind of combo what you do. So if you've got a lot of tiles slotted about, and then you kind of put one in where it's connect up to a lot of other ones.
Yeah, you could score that. You could score 10 points with a single tile if you set it up.
Yeah,
perfectly. And the game goes until somebody's made a horizontal row. So basically, at the end of each round, once everyone's tiled their walls, dumped the surplus tiles that the very smart and savvy among you will have realised from listening to our description. But, what about those extra tiles? Well, they go in the box lid, or to one side, basically. If nobody has made a full horizontal row of tiles on their 5x5 wall, then you do another round of the game. So you fill up all the little circles in the centre of the table with tiles, and you go again and do another round. And so you keep repeating until somebody has made a horizontal row. And once that's happened, you get bonus points for horizontal rows and for vertical rows and for 5 of a kind. If you've got all 5 red tiles on your wall, you get 10 points for that as well. And then whoever's got the most points at the end wins.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Now, it sounds a wee bit confusing. When you're trying to describe this to somebody, like verbally, in this podcast form, it's very confusing.
I'm not entirely sure it was worth the effort, but describing abstract strategy games.
But when you start playing this game, it really does make a lot of sense. Like, you really are just, looking at what tiles you need to put onto your wall. And then just going for those tiles. Yeah. And trying to do it in a way that will score you as many points you possibly can, because you really want to be grouping your tiles up so that you're scoring maximum points for having adjacent ones and the stuff in the rows and things like that. I was actually wondering, like, it is possible to end the game and complete your wall. I very nearly did, I think. I think it was only like 3 or 4 spaces off completing the entire wall. Mm-hmm. I was wondering how many points, I would have to sit and figure out how many points you would actually get for completing your entire wall. I mean, you must rack up a ridiculous amount. Because you get all the adjacency bonuses, you get all the 5 of a kind, you get all the horizontal row bonuses. It would be ridiculous. It's just kind of that idea just popped into my head.
There probably is a maximum theoretical score. It'd be very difficult to 100% fill the wall because of the way the
game works. Yeah,
works.
It is possible.
It is possible. Yes.
But equally
hard.
I think a lot of games will end with not that many tiles on the wall at all. It just depends on who you're playing with.
Because I think it's interesting. This is one of those games where somebody could end the game early and do it deliberately.
Yes, that's definitely an aspect. You should do that if you can see that
if you're going to win,
you should end the game, because there's no point in continuing. Because it can only get worse. You can only lose from there. So as soon as you see you're going to win, end the game definitely. It's an interesting game. There's lots of, like you say, there's lots of aspects to it. And just the fact that you play more than one round in this, always. So that plays into it, because if you've got a lot of tiles left over, because any of these little rows that you're making in the intermediate area, any of them that you haven't filled fully, the tiles that are on there, they just stay there for the next round. So it's possible to start a round with quite a lot of tiles in your intermediate area. That's not necessarily a brilliant thing. You're going to fill up a lot of the rows this round, but you're also probably going to take some penalty points for that as well. So you have to try and think about that a little bit. You also have to look at what your opponents are doing, especially when you play 2-player. This takes up to 4. Like in a lot of these games, the more players you have, the more difficult it becomes to look at what other people are doing in a way that is effective as well, because there's more chaos in it when you've got multiple players, and it's longer before your turn comes around. So it becomes very, you can't really say, well, I'll do this, they'll do this, then I'll do that. But with 2 players, you can. Yeah. Like Splendor's like this as well. And it's a big part of these games is where you can look a number of moves ahead. Yeah,
when it's just 2 players.
It's definitely doable. You don't have to be like the sort of person who's great at chess, who can, read a board and look like 10 moves ahead. You don't have to be that kind of person. Normal people can play this game and look at it and go, well, I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to do. Yeah. My opponent. And if they're going to do that, then I can use that to decide what I'm going to do for my moves. So it does have, some people call it hate drafting, I notice.
Hate drafting?
Yeah, on Board Game Geek, that's a term they use, hate drafting, where sometimes you'll take tiles to prevent your opponent making a play for them. Apparently, some people don't like it. I'm guessing.
It's another tactic.
To me, that's just like...
Yeah. No, I do know what you mean. I found that we were all I think we were all had an eye on that, doing that.
With 3 players...
But then we never... Your plans always changed.
Yeah, you can a little bit with 3 players. Yeah. But it's obviously harder. I think with 4, it'd be very difficult. But yeah, what Euan's saying is... It's maybe a wee bit trickier in Azul to look at what other people are doing than in some other games. Because, I don't know, it just seemed like... Yeah, it's hard to describe. But maybe we're just not very good at it.
We should have been more. We should have done more hate drafting, and then we would have all would have worked out.
But yeah, it's an unusual game, I think. I'm not quite sure why people went so crazy for this. I don't really understand.
It's just a neat little game. It looks nice,
I think so. Some abstract strategy games, you tend to find that a lot of people that play themey games and stuff like that won't go near them. Yeah. But I find that there's something about this game that just makes it really makes you want to play it. I think it is just the chunky tiles and all that, but you look at the way that it's done and it's quite straightforward. Yeah. In the way that it plays, but there's still a bit of strategy there, like Dave was mentioning there. Quite a bit of strategy there, actually, in terms of you've got to pick the right tiles at the right time and make sure your opponents aren't doing, and the game plays quickly and all those sort of things. So it's just it just ticks a lot of boxes, I think, for a board game especially the fact that it plays quickly, I think, is one of the main things, because I think abstract strategy games, when you think about it, you're like, oh, a long drawn out abstract strategy game with no theme, like I'm just not going to feel like I'm doing anything. And this isn't that. This is, it's a quick game that's got a bit of depth to it, and I think that's the appeal.
Yeah, you're probably right. I don't think it's the most visually appealing game I've ever seen, though. And I mean, yeah, the tiles are cool.
Yeah.
I think the board is horrible.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, it's not horrible, but it's not.
I don't like it.
It's not as striking as the tiles are like really. They look really cool, and then the board's just kind of.
Yeah, it's the tiles are the main thing. Though.
Yeah.
That's what people are looking at. They're not interested in the boards.
Interestingly, I think I'm not alone in thinking this, because I don't know if you noticed, but there's a new Azul coming already.
With a jazzed up board.
It's to do with stained glass windows, so it's not Azulejos, but they're still branding it as Azul :
Church edition.
Azul.
No, it's
glass.
It's like wonderful windows, or no, I don't know what it is. Windows of Wonder. However, people are not happy about this. Some people in the board game geek world, they're concerned. People are always very concerned for the well-being of
course,
games makers.
Wow.
Which is very good of them to be. Yeah. But one of the differences in this new version of Azul is that it doesn't have that ugly score track at the top of the board.
It's called the Stained Glass of Sintra.
There you go.
Sintra.
So it's similar, even though it's not tiles. It's they're like little plastic sections of stained glass.
Yeah, they are. But they're transparent.
Can you see how they've taken away that bit at the top of the board? The ugly score tracker.
I can see it. Yeah, I'm looking at pictures here.
Already, I'm like, yeah, that's much better.
But this board is nicer. I
like
to say.
it.
But it's got people concerned.
Oh no, the concern is the Azul :
Oh really?
Apparently, they shouldn't have.
They should have just called it something else.
Yeah, they don't like it.
No,
it's a bit like the whole thing with Pandemic, where there are some spin-off Pandemic games that are not about diseases, like Pandemic, Reign of Cthulhu, and so, which is a good game because I have it and it's really good. But the
license thing,
people don't like.
Slap a Cthulhu on something.
Well, it's not that. It's not the Cthulhu bit. It's the Pandemic bit that people are like.
Oh right, yeah.
So when is Azul Cthulhu coming out?
That'll be great. Place your cultists.
Zombie Azul.
I mean, I wonder what their take on Power Grid Factory Manager is then. Is that are people concerned about that?
Oh, nobody cared about that game.
Right. Nobody played it apart from us.
I like that game. We actually were going to play it the other night there, and we just decided not to.
No.
Anyway, right, we need to move on. So that is Azul. That is designed by Michael Kiesling.
Yep.
Published by
Plan B Games.
Plan B. Okay, so we're finally going to talk about a game that I've been harping on about since probably this podcast began.
It's your favourite game.
It's not my favourite game. It's one of my favourite games. It's one of the oldest ones in terms of it's one of the first sort of proper board games I bought. In that period when we were playing things like Puerto Rico and Power Grid and stuff. This was one of the ones that caught my attention. I don't know what it was about it that caught my attention. Probably just the theming of it, to be honest. But we are going back now to 2007 when this game came out. This is Colosseum. And the board game geeks amongst you will probably know that this game has been reprinted in the past few years after years of people asking for it. We'll get into the reprint. I've not got the reprint, but we'll get into why I've got the superior version in a second. So I've got the Days of Wonder version. And anybody, again, if you know what Days of Wonder are like, you'll know that they have always, since, before people really started to take production value seriously and stuff, have always made really decent, nice-looking games, colourful, like really good bits. I'm sure there are probably some exceptions to that, but in general, Days of Wonder games have always looked nice.
They're really expensive too.
Yeah. Yeah, aye. Now, in this game, in Colosseum, everybody owns their own Colosseum. And there's a board, and this board is and this is one of the things that I dislike about the reprint as well, because this board in the original Days of Wonder version is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so much detail in it, and it is just how would you describe it? It's like a sort of Roman bit of land or something like that. There's like a nice little pool in the middle, and it's mostly sort of got that sort of orangey, sandy look around it. And there's a path going right round the board. Now, weirdly, there's a roll and move aspect to this game, which is a no-no in games these days, and has been for a while.
But it's employed in an interesting way.
It's employed in an interesting fashion. Yeah, you're right, and that's what the track's all about. It's also where your Colosseums are placed. So at the beginning of the game, depending on how many players you have, there are spaces on the board for putting the Colosseums, and you start with a small Colosseum, which is kind of like a perfect circle. Yeah. It takes up 2 spaces on the board. So everybody puts their Colosseums down. There's a bag of tiles which have various assets on them, I suppose you would call them. I think that might be what the game calls them as well. And there are event cards. Well, I wouldn't call them event cards, actually. That implies something else.
They're shows.
They're shows. Yeah, they're shows. These are the shows that you're going to put on in your Colosseum. And everybody starts with 2 of the small shows, which you can put on in your tiny little Colosseum. And these little show cards will tell you what assets you need. So at the start of the game, everybody draws some assets from the bag. Again, it differs in the number of players, so you get less if there's more players. But also, in the middle of this beautiful board on the table, there are 5 markets, and there are 3 tokens in each market, so you place some tokens in the markets. And what you're actually doing is you're trying to put on your shows with the maximum number of assets that you can match up with them. So if you've got let's say a gladiator show which needs 3 gladiators and maybe 2 boats and a torch or something like that, you want to try and get as much of those things because you will score more points essentially for them. The scoring system in this is a bit strange as well, but we'll get to that in a second, because I actually find it really interesting, the scoring system. Now, you might start the game with only 2 gladiators and 1 boat and a torch. So you're missing a boat and a gladiator, so how are you going to get those? Well, you can bid on them in the marketplace in the centre, or you can trade with other people. Now, I've always said with this game, this is one of those games where do not play this game with people that don't want to trade things. Right? But I have a cousin, all right, who will remain nameless. But we played this game with him, and it was just one of the worst Colosseum experiences I've ever had. It's just like, oh, do you want to give me that lion you've got there, and I'll give you 4 of these asset tokens that you really need. You'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't trust you. He's just a very mistrustful person. He doesn't trust anybody. So don't play this game with those kinds of people, because the trading in this game, I think, is actually it's a fun part of the game, and it's quite important as well. So what you're actually doing during the game is, at the start of every round, everybody gets to make an investment. Now, making an investment can be things like expanding your Colosseum. You're going to have to do that if you want to put on some of the bigger shows that are there. So following on from that, you can buy a show. So you can buy a show card, so that lets you put that show on. You can also do things like you can buy a season ticket, which gives you bonus points. It's essentially spectators, or what the points are in this game. It's the amount of spectators you've attracted to your Colosseum. So season tickets give you guaranteed amounts of spectators. You can buy an Emperor's Lodge, I believe it's called, which lets you roll an extra die when you're doing the whole roll and move bit. Not to be underestimated, the Emperor's Lodge. That can be very powerful. What's the other thing that I'm missing that you can buy? I can't remember. It's probably not that important right now, but that's an idea of the kind of things that you can buy there. The next step is that I believe you then do your auction thing. Now, the auctions are kind of strange because there is a minimum bid, so you have to make sure you have a certain amount of money every round if you want to buy something from the marketplace. And it's one of those things where, you pick one of the 5 markets that has 3 asset tokens in it, and you have to go to bid a minimum 8. It just goes around the table. You pass. If the person that initiated the bid wins, that's fine. The marketplace gets refilled. If they don't win, the marketplace doesn't get refilled, and that person then has to pick a different market. So when it is your turn, you're kind of limited to what's on the table at that time. You're not going to see anything else. Yeah. So that's a mechanic that you see used quite often in games. I'm not entirely sure why, but it's there. And the next part's the trading. and then you get to put your show on, and that's the fun bit. That's where everybody starts taking the piss out of each other. It's like, oh, you're putting on this gladiator show, you've not got any gladiators. What the hell's this all about? But basically, during that time, you will roll a dice. If you've not got the Emperor's Lodge, you only roll one. It's a weird dice because it's 6-sided, but it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's got like a 1 to 3 space on it. I think it's got a couple of those, and then it's got like 2s and 4s, 5, 6 or whatever. And those are just letting you move the little Roman. What would you call them? There's an emperor, there's consuls, and there's something else. But they're basically just Roman statesmen, basically, who are spaced out across the board, and they will let you move those guys in. Now, getting them into your Colosseum just before you put a show on is really, really good because they give you lots of bonus fans. People turn up because they're there, basically. Getting the Emperor's Lodge can be really useful because it lets you move. You can move 2 of them, or you can move one guy really far, which means getting the Emperor into your Colosseum is generally the goal. if you want to get loads of bonus fans, he's worth a lot. So getting him in there is really good. There are various other ways that you can move these guys around. There are Emperor's Medallion things that you can pick up as the game goes on through various things that let you move them around and stuff. But you can also use those medallions to take money, or if you've got 2 of them, you can make an extra investment into your Colosseum, that kind of thing. So yeah, you put your event on and you add up. You see how many asset tokens you've got. There's each event card has at the bottom of it a little thing that tells you if you're missing 1, then you score this. You're missing 2, you score this. But if you've got all of them, you'll score the maximum number of fans. You add on your season tickets. You'll add on if you've got statesmen in your Colosseum. If you've put on previous events, that gives you bonus things, because once you're done with an event, you can flip it over. You can flip it back again at any point to put that event on, but you lose the bonus fans for it. And yeah, you add up the whole thing, and then whatever amount that comes to, let's say it's 32 or whatever, you take that much money and you move your scoring marker up there, unless your scoring marker's already on a higher space. Because the important thing in this game is the best show that you've put on. It's not, you're not adding it up every time. It's the best show that you've put on, which is an interesting mechanic, which I actually really like, because quite a lot in this game, you tend to find that people will win the game for the show that they put on in the 4th round rather than the last one. And you do tend to find that happens quite often. It's happened a lot. Yeah. So sometimes the 5th round doesn't actually make that much difference, and people are like, you tend to get to that last round and people are deliberately just throwing statesmen out of each other's Colosseums and, before they're rolling the dice, just because it's like, no, I'm protecting my lead here.
Right.
Wow. And then you move on to another round, and you play a total of 5 rounds, so the game's not even that long. But you feel like you get a lot done in that time. You're, like every investment round, you want to expand your Colosseum and, get a new event. And sometimes some people will take a slightly different strategy. If they've got the Emperor medallions, for example, and get that extra investment, then you tend to find those people will put on the big shows, the biggest ones. And I don't know what it is about this game that I enjoy so much, but it just seems to have a little bit of everything in it. And, it's got the trading, it's got the auctioning, it's got the sort of moving guys around the board and trying to score maximum points. And it's just bright and colourful, and I've always just loved playing this game. What did you guys think of it? You've played it a few times.
I've played Colosseum a number of times, and yeah, it's just always quite enjoy. I never do particularly well at it, but I always quite enjoy playing it. Yeah, it's interesting, just the kind of, like, there do seem to be like multiple elements going on that you don't realise this a lot of the time in this game, that you have to kind of balance a lot of stuff, like having the Emperor's Lodge, which I didn't do.
Yeah.
But I found that was a big advantage. And I think what ended up happening with me, I ended up like sort of making the mistake of I was forced to make a choice, and I ended up not extending the Colosseum to be able to do one of the biggest shows. And you really need, like, there's certain things you all kind of like need to kind of do. I mean, I guess it's possible to win with maybe the tier down, and you've got a lot of other points, if you've got all the Emperor and everything like that. And just like keeping track of like what those are doing and everything, like, while you're also trying to make sure that you've got the token, like, your sort of assets, to kind of plan ahead as well, to, make sure you get like a decent show.
I was going to say, the one thing I didn't mention about the assets is the superstar tokens. So certain asset tokens have superstar tokens. I don't know. I think that might be the term they use. I can't even remember. But like, if you have at least 3 gladiators, for example, and it's more gladiators than anybody else has, then you get the superstar gladiator token, which adds bonus fans to any show you put on that features gladiators. And you get superstar lion. I think there's superstar priest.
There's got to be a superstar lion.
Superstar boats.
Yep.
Horse.
Sorry?
Horse.
Superstar horse, yeah, superstar horse. And I think superstar comedian is the other one.
Yeah.
So we always have a laugh with those things. That becomes a big part of the trading mechanism, actually, because there are things like I was like, Euan, I'll give you this gladiator, and that means that you have more gladiators than Dave does, which means you get the superstar token.
And you'll be like stockpiling.
It's tempting.
You'll have about like 6 of an asset token, even though most of them only need you to have like 2. You spend, I've got a superstar over here.
Yeah, and what's interesting in this game is that you have to give away a token, don't you?
Yeah, sorry, that is an important part of the game.
It's actually super important because it stops you from just doing the same thing over and over. You have to. It keeps you planning ahead, which you need to do anyway because you should be putting on the bigger and better shows. But that kind of encourages you to do it. But it also makes it difficult to maintain your gladiator advantage.
Yep.
If you've got like, because if you're sometimes Euan saying like keeping 6 or whatever, but sometimes, quite often when we played, like I had 4 gladiators and Chris would have 3, and then I'd put on like my gladiator show, and I'd be reluctant to have to throw away one of the tiles that I use for the show. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it has to be one that you used.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I don't really need these gladiators because the next show I'm going to put on doesn't need like a ton of gladiators. But at the same time, I don't want to give away any of them. And on top of that, what is it? The person who comes
the person who is in last place,
right,
steals a tile from the person in first place at the end of every round, and that's an important thing as well because that kind of offsets the whole thing. If somebody is lagging behind a bit, they can really mess with somebody's advantage by just taking away the one thing that they need for one of the shows that's coming up.
Yeah, it's not just a catch-up mechanism. It plays into that superstar mechanic as well.
Yep.
And just like Chris says, like making it harder for people to put on their next show. I really like this game, like a lot. Well, it might be because I won, but no, this is an example of the kind of Euro game that I like.
Yeah.
I'm less keen on the super heavy resource management type Euro games where you've got like wood and stone and stuff. Tons of cubes. I'm not super keen on those. This is more the days of
dropping a few hints.
The days of wonder.
Games he wants us to play.
Well, there aren't that many. Right? It's such a Days of Wonder game as well because
totally.
I mean, it's not that every game that is published by Days of Wonder is like this, but Ticket to Ride certainly is. And I mean, they're different games. They're so different, but the feel of playing them, they're not. They're just that balance of fun.
Yeah.
And like Chris said, it has the Euro things that it has are the good things. Like it doesn't the fixed turn order. It doesn't go on for too long. It's not too random, but there's like a little bit of there's a little bit in there with the moving of the consoles and stuff.
Yeah.
So the emperors and consoles and things.
Well, that's definitely an abstracted mechanic.
And it's got.
In real life, you don't just extend a Colosseum so that it's over an emperor.
You don't know that, Euan.
Well, maybe that's how they did it back in them days.
And it's just got that aesthetic fun of collecting things and matching things.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's that matching stuff up thing. Like that's what Ticket to Ride has as well. You're like matching things up like with your cards and then making little connections. And in this, you're like, oh, I need this and I need that to match. I need these gladiators and I need these horses to match up with this little card that I have in my hand in front of me that I can see. It's very clear what I need for, if I want to put on the lion show the Lion of Magnificence. They all have great names.
Yeah, they do.
Every show is unique. We didn't say that. They're not the same. There's like 30 different shows.
Yeah.
And they're tiered. They start with the sort of tier 1 shows, which you only need a handful of assets, all the way up to the sort of tier 1s, the tier 3s, where you need a fully expanded Colosseum and a big list of different things.
Yeah.
But each one is different. So some of them will need maybe gladiators and horses and a bush. Never quite figured out what the bush was. And others will need, like boats. And there was no boat lion show, though. I was disappointed with that.
They don't go well together.
There was one that just had lions and like a guy like telling their story. It was like Parade of the Lions, it was called. They all have great names. Or you can just make up your names for them as well.
Well, just to give you like... We've got things like the Safari Optimus Maximus, which is a very Roman name, but then you've got things like the Great Prophecies of Jupiter, Venus's Equestrian Cavalcade. That's the horse.
Whoa.
That's the horse show.
That's
where
cool.
There's just basically a bunch of comedians and singers and stuff just talking about horses. Legendary lion hunters. Antelus Created the Earth is another one. That's that doesn't have any gladiators in it. That's kind of disappointing. But yeah, they're amazing, the names in this, actually. They're just really fun, because then every time somebody put a show on, it wasn't just a case of I'm putting on this show and having this many fans. People were like, no, I'm putting on Caesar's Triumphal March and I'm using all of these guys.
Yeah, and
that's the fun part.
And they also represent a distribution of the different assets. So, obviously if somebody's got like a ton of gladiators and horses and so on, you're going to have different assets in your hand. So you'll be putting on a different show. It's sort of the Lion's Procession.
Yep, I found the Lion's Procession. So yeah, you're right, Dave. There is just a show with lions and storytellers in cages.
I never got to put that on. I was so disappointed.
Somebody tried the lion.
I was like, when we started this game, I was like, right, I'm going to collect all the lions. But
could be the lion guy.
I'm the Lion King. It just didn't happen because at the start of the game I had a ton of gladiators and horses, and that was it for me. It was gladiator horseman for the rest of the game. I mean, there's a few weird things with it.
I was very boaty in that last game, I believe.
Because the shows are unique, it comes with a sheet of paper that shows you all the events that you can put on, what assets they require, how much they cost in gold coins to buy, and how many points they will give you, the maximum amount of points they will give you if you put them on successfully. So there is a bit of passing this sheet of paper around for people to look at, or is it a card? I can't remember. So you can look and plan your purchases for the future.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's a bit unusual.
Yeah.
I think that's not something you would.
I remember
that's not an ideal thing. That's something you would normally try and design out of your design.
But I remember the first couple of times I played this game, I was like, I'm not looking at that thing, but it makes sense once you get your head around it.
Yeah.
Like, and you do, like, I do just stare at that thing and plan ahead.
Oh yeah,
it's like, you really need this. It makes it so much easier than flipping through the tiles and trying to figure out which one's the best for you. This spreadsheet has all the information on it already.
I mean, I was alright with it. I mean, if you played another game, there'd be like an offer of events sitting out for people to... I don't particularly like that anyway, but this was fine. But it is a wee bit non-Days of Wondery, I suppose we could say. And the other glaring thing is player count, unfortunately. You need a lot of players for this game, because it doesn't work as well with...
It doesn't work as well with
counts.
3 people. Because of the whole trading aspect, I think the game does work better with... 4 or 5 players at least. Well, at least 4, but it goes up to 5.
Yeah, it doesn't work. So we played with 3, and we had a lot of fun. I had a ton of fun, but we also had a lot of money.
Yeah, we did.
Because the game isn't balanced properly for 3 players, unfortunately.
Yeah, the auction aspect becomes silly at that point.
Yeah,
because you're just like 3 people, and it's like you're not fighting over things that much. And we tended to find that people were just like, I'm gonna bid for this for the minimum bid, and everybody would go, nah, I'm looking at someone else. Like,
yeah, I put on in the last turn, I put on whatever the final show is, Caesar's Cornucopia of wonder.
That's Caesar's Triumphal March, that one, yeah.
Yeah, and that needs a lot of stuff.
Yes.
It gives you like 50 points or something, which is a lot, plus all the other stuff on top of it. I had no difficulty whatsoever in putting that on. Because I was looking through the sheet and I was like, what will I put on? I was like, well, I'm just going to put on the one that gives me the most points because it will be easy. And I had wildcard tiles. I didn't need to use them.
That's pretty ridiculous because those wildcard tiles were really
we were slightly worried. They came up powerful. Early and we were like, oh, this might. I got 2 of them. And we were like, this might break the game. But
you were wanting to actually like chuck them back. We were like,
in the end, I think I used one of them once.
Yeah.
So it didn't even matter. So yeah, it was a bit of a economy issue, I would say, with 3 players. Still a lot of fun.
I definitely remember being a lot of fun with 5.
Aye, it's definitely better with 5. I've played this game a lot, and I would say that, play it with 4 or 5 people. One other bit of advice I would give is that the rules for trading asset tokens and money between the players, there is a specific phase for that in the game, and that's fine, but the rules for it are that just ignore the rules in the rulebook. The rules in the rulebook are basically just that the starting player, does all the trades that they want to do, and then the next player does all the trades that they want to do. And I'm just like, no, just make this a free-for-all, because then it's more fun.
Yeah.
It's more fun if people are just throwing things at each other constantly. Like, I don't really see why they've made it that rigidly structured. I just don't understand it. But the game is more fun if it is just a case of let's just offer trades to each other as we see fit until everybody's happy or unhappy, whatever way it goes.
Well, there's no need. I can't see any reason why you would do it any other way. It's like quicker doing it that way.
It's probably
well.
It's probably just to bring an end to the phase, basically, so that it doesn't go on forever with people constantly trading. But I mean, just be sensible about it. Don't play with fools. But yeah, Colosseum, like I said, is still one of my favourite games. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, Dave.
It's one of the best games I've ever played. No
really?
Exaggeration. Yeah, I mean, I haven't played that many games, but it's definitely one of my favourites, I would say.
Cool. Euan, how does this rank in your gaming list?
I wouldn't say. I don't think it's at the top. It's not going to beat Food Chain Magnate. So,
Euan loves a heavy Euro.
My favourite game, Food Chain Magnate.
Yeah, I was less keen on Food Chain.
Well, there weren't any resource blocks, Dave. So.
That is true. No, it's like, there's no resource blocks. What have you got to complain about?
Yes,
how about this entire table of cards that we can't even fit on the main table?
But Dave, that's the best thing about Food Chain Magnate.
Yeah, I mean,
Euan wants a game that he can't see as it disappears over the end of the horizon.
I want an ever more cumbersome pyramid of cards.
Did I see there's an expansion coming out for that?
Food Chain Magnate?
I think there might be.
Oh, let's not talk about that right now. let's not. We're running out of time here, actually. Okay. So yes, that's Colosseum. Now, we're going to talk about the differences between this and the new version that came out, which is by Tasty Minstrel. But sorry, Lance, I know you're a friend of the show and everything, but my God, that's an ugly version you've created. Like, I mean, I feel kind of sorry for people. I mean, I think it's pretty much the same game.
Yeah.
I think they've kind of just remade it. I don't know what rules tweaks or anything they've made, but I have no desire to replace the copy that I have because I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and it looks better. Dave, you had a quick look at some of the screenshots. They've done some weird. They made some weird choices. Where,
it's a bit
slightly cartoony artwork and bits and pieces of it.
I wasn't a fan of the changes, that's for sure. And the little pawns for the Emperor and the consoles and what have you, they're definitely
better in this.
Better in the original.
Yeah.
So that much I don't think you can really argue with. The other stuff you could sort of.
Yeah, I suppose
could go either way, but I agree. Get the old version if you can, if you're lucky enough to see a copy.
I'm glad you agree. Okay, that's Colosseum, which is by Wolfgang Kramer and Markus Lübke, and like I say, I have the Days of Wonder version. Okay, so that is episode 96 in the bag. We're going to give you our internets. If you want to email us, you can do so at firstplayertoken@gmail.com. That's FIRST. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, PSN community. This is something we have. We are on Twitch. we have a Discord, which is discord.me/firstplayertoken. Our Twitter and our Twitch are 1ST player token.
That's once player token.
Yep, not FIRST, it's onced. And we are part of the Podnose Network,
The UK's leading entertainment podcast network.
Any news, Euan?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're
still podcasting away and being the best, being the leading, the market leader for podcasts in the UK.
Am I right in saying that George is getting himself involved in actually doing some podcasting again?
I believe so, yeah. Well, I think he's still got the Patreon going. How successful that is, I don't really know, but it's, yeah. I think he's been meaning to get back into podcasting for a while. He's just been too busy organising things.
Organising other people's.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you want to check out Podnose, which is a network of podcasts which we're a part of, you can go to podnose.com and find the catalogue there. Okay, we'll be back next week with episode 97. Oh, ever so close to 100 now. Ever so close.
Creeping in there.
Creeping up. But until then, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.